All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back from being so rudely interrupted by the fire alarm. So, all right, here we are. We are live again on YouTube. So, Brandon, thanks again for coming on. I'm going to give a quick update for those of the guys and girls out there who are going to jump back on or be watching just part two. We were talking in part one, which will be up before this video on the archive of Gutter Fighting Secrets on the YouTube channel. Before we were interrupted by the damn fire alarm, we were talking all about nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare and how to survive through these things. Brandon's experience as a Marine Corps sergeant, he got to go through an extensive month-long course on Cbrn. And so now he is considered a subject matter expert on this stuff, more so on the operational side of this, i.e., he knows how to decontaminate, and he knows about decontamination and survival methodology and tactics. So that's exactly what we're talking about with him today. So, Brandon, welcome back on. And I think we left off kind of talking about the different levels of radiation, alpha that you can kind of scrub off yourself. And then there's beta that's more, apt to go through your skin if you're not wearing a protective suit. And then the gamma, which is like the mother of it all, that'll just fry you if you don't get in some good cover. We were about to discuss decontamination showers and things like that. So if you want, I'll kind of let you rip here, and you can kind of take us through it.
Yeah. So actually, I think we left off on a question a guy was asking about, like decontamination showers. And I really think like back in the 80s and 90s and stuff, that was like a big thing. That's what they used to do. They had like this, it was almost like a gel they sprayed on you. And I think the Soviet Union used it a lot, obviously, before they split up. And basically, this gel just had a chemical in it that attached to the particles and basically drug it off of you. The decontamination that we did, basically, it's just a setup line of like 55-gallon barrels or trash cans, and they're filled with like chlorine water. Basically, you go through each step, and basically there'll be people manning each station. They're taking it off of them, they're dipping your stuff to basically wash the particles off, and then they're taking your clothing somewhere and disposing of it. But then we were talking earlier about taking off your suit. So your suit is disposable. It's not something you can reuse. We were talking, take it off, try and minimize disturbance so you don't spread those alpha particles. One thing I forgot to mention is when you're taking it off, turn it inside out. It's like if it's a simple jacket, you're obviously taking it off, and if somebody can take it off for you, you put your arms back, letting them pull it off, and they're kind of closing it up inside of itself. And you're taking off your pants, you're pulling them down, basically putting the legs up inside of them and taking them off inside out, and then you're disposing of it. But now, like I said, we pretty much just do like chlorine water. That's how we would always get rid of it, at least our decontamination stations. But friction's a big thing for alpha particles. If you got friction, you can get them off. Beta particles, like I said, that's pretty much just having a suit that'll catch them, and then you're disposing of the suit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Chlorine, honestly, I wouldn't have thought. I know that's used, but is there some kind of chemical process that happens with chlorine being able to kind of neutralize it, or is that more of a cure-all?
Yeah, that's honestly one that I don't know. That's one that I guess that's going to be somebody who knows more than me. It's one thing that you're told is chlorine water and chlorine. I'm not really sure if there's like a chemical reaction there. Like I said, these things are actually atomic particles that are coming off. So an alpha particle actually is very similar to like a helium nucleus, has two protons, two neutrons. So maybe there's something there that creates a chemical bond that basically pulls them off of you. I'm not really sure on that. That's just one thing we always tell us: alpha particles use friction and chlorine water if you can.
Now, I've also heard about using shampoo. You ever heard of that?
I haven't, but that might work actually.
Supposedly, there's a good reaction that happens with the shampoo and really binds the substances and kind of neutralize them, take them away. But they say whatever you do, don't use conditioner or don't use shampoo with the conditioner in it, because that binds the particles and drags it more so into you. but use shampoo because it will rinse it off. So a good at-home decon type of thing. If you don't have anything else, you don't have bleach or anything like that or chlorine, shampoo can work quite well. Now, I think another thing that we want to keep in mind is not getting this stuff in our face and eyes. Like, we didn't have a gas mask. How important is it to kind of like work it so you close your eyes or don't get this stuff ingested?
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing with alpha is ingesting. As long as it's really not getting in your wound or inside your mouth or your nose, maybe your eyes, it's pretty much harmless to you. So yeah, like you said, you might want to figure out a technique to be able to wash yourself to keep getting that stuff on you. Yeah, and the shampoo, I mean, that's probably a good point. You have to do some research on that with us. They probably teach us that because you're not carrying around bottles of shampoo.
Right.
Middle of a war zone, but yeah, the conditioner's definitely a thing. I mean, conditioner, it grabs to everything. I do matter that with other things. You don't want to put conditioner in your hair if you're trying to keep things out of it. So that's a good point.
We got Tommy Gunn in here saying, so Tommy Gunn was a Cold Warrior during the 1980s, Canadian Special Forces guy. And he was saying it was drilled into him during his career, gas, gas, gas. And I would assume during the Cold War, this was really driven into the guys. I mean, the threat of nuclear war was there every single day. How much of a threat would it have been considered to you guys in the modern Marine Corps? I mean, obviously enough that they wanted more subject matter experts, right?
Yeah, actually, we still do the gas thing. That's the call sign. So, like I said, if whatever the delivery method is, if you were to see something happen, that's the first you yell is gas, and then throw in your mask. And there's often like a hand signal. It's something like up here above the shoulders. Honestly, I don't remember it. I mean, personal opinion, I am a little bit pessimistic of our own abilities because honestly, we're impressive sometimes, but I don't know, like I said, I'm kind of just picky about that stuff. I don't think we would do too well if like a large scale Cbrn attack happened. I mean, it's as simple as we haven't really don't have the experience with it. And I think the logistics of it's just going to be hard. Like I said, your suits, they have a lifespan. That's not something you're continuously using. So I mean, the logistic support that it would take to support like an infantry battalion, like our size, like 1,200 people, constantly supplying them suits every day, new filters every day. I mean, it would take a massive amount of logistical support just to be able to operate. Yeah, I don't see anybody faring too well, to be honest with you. I mean, we obviously have the best infrastructure there is in the military, and even then, like let's say there was a large-scale nuclear attack across the United States, we wouldn't fare too well. And that just goes to show how unprepared everybody is, because everybody else would be far worse off.
Yeah. Now, you bring up a good point about the filters, changing them out.
Yep.
If it's you or me, and I've only got an extra filter or two, maybe with my gas mask, how often can I stretch these things out and make them work in an environment like that?
So a good rule of thumb is if you have obviously an amount that you can change them as often as you can, but if you don't, when it just gets difficult to breathe.
Okay.
Obviously, that's not a perfect scenario, but it gets to the point where it becomes difficult to breathe. So your dual mask filters. So like I said, the Avons, they're a dual filter. The Mira CM7, I think it's 7A or whatever, it's a dual mask filter, but obviously they can operate with just one. But the problem with that is you're operating just on one filter. Now you're taking in all that air through one filter instead of two filters. So two filters is obviously going to stretch the lifespan. It's still the same basically, but you can go longer without having to change your filters. So that's a good point with gas masks. You get a dual filter, you can go longer without having to change them out. Yeah, I mean, as long as you can breathe through them, they're probably all right. But the main thing is if you were to take off your gas mask in a contaminated area, now the inside's contaminated and those filters aren't going to do you too well. The Avon filters actually have contamination little label on the back of them. So if you take them off, there's a little circle that's white. and it will actually turn blue once it's been contaminated. And it's any level of contamination. So like ours, they obviously were always issued them from things like CS gas and stuff, but they were still the NBC filters. They would just turn blue basically to do gas mask runs. So you put them on, basically to reduce your airflow, we would run with them. And just us breathing into them, those little indicators would turn blue on them. So that's a cool thing to do with them too.
That's cool. I like that. Now, something to bring up here is about surviving a nuclear attack is it seems daunting. Yeah, it seems like the odds are definitely against you for sure. But my grandfather was a Marine, and he was a Marine during the Korean War. And he didn't go to Korea. Long story short, he was having his wife, my grandmother, was having my dad, and he was on the troop transport ship, and she went into labor. So I guess the sergeant came, pulled him off, and said, "Get out of here! Your wife's having a kid." They never sent it back over to Korea. So instead, one of the things he was doing was, and there's films of this out on YouTube. They put him all out in a ditch in the middle of the Nevada desert. They fucking set off a nuclear bomb. And then they sent them all into the blast zone, like literally right after. I don't think they had any gas masks on or anything. The guy lived to be almost 80 and never had any like radiation poisoning or anything. So, I don't know if the nukes were less powerful back then or what the deal was, but I don't think too many of those guys really had any immediate health risks, and certainly not, a bunch of them lived to be pretty old. So that tells me right there that it is possible to survive through something like this.
It is. I mean, it definitely is. Honestly, it's like Hollywood has made people more scared of nuclear weapons than they actually are. Like if you look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there's like close to 2 million people living in those two towns now.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one was which. One of them, I want to say it was a little boy, only had 14 pounds of radioactive material on it that went into fission. Actually, like it was 14 pounds total, and then only 2 pounds of it went into fission. Or it was one of the two that did that, and the other one had like 140 pounds, but it was uranium. One was plutonium, one was uranium. Plutonium, I think, was the lesser one. But yeah, I mean, over 2 million people are living there now, so I mean, they're perfectly habitable.
It says something about the half-life of it, right?
Yeah, like I said, they go into radioactive decay. But then people look at places like Chernobyl and they think, okay, that's what's going to happen if the bomb goes off. Not necessarily. You have a full core laying on the ground at Chernobyl with no containment. That's why it's still radioactive. We were talking about neutrons, and as the neutrons shoot out, they interact with nucleuses all around them, every little atom, and it makes them radioactive. You had an open core shooting out neutrons for untold amount of time before they finally got it shielded. So I mean, it irradiated everything around there for a good while before anything happened. And you still have, I can't remember how much they say it weighs. It's a good bit. The core itself, it was a good bit laying down there constantly, just shooting off neutrons. I mean, so it's going to take forever before it decays to a point that it's not radioactive, dangerously radioactive anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point about the core being exposed. And I suppose Fukushima is probably similar.
Yeah. And so that's the thing with me is there's different types of bombs, and I can actually talk about some of them. The bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 5 years, they're fine. You could live right there after 5 years. It's with the targeting. So one thing, if we're talking about nuclear and radioactive threats here, is look around you and see where there are nuclear power plants at. And then go into the news, type those in, and then type in like incidents and things like that. So like I live, it's within like 80 miles of a nuclear power plant in Virginia. And it's been cited like over a dozen times for safety errors. And it's like, yeah, that's great to know. But the thing is, if we were to ever be subject to a nuclear attack, those are the places they're going to be targeting. Power plants, anything they can do to shut down our infrastructure. There's a coal burning plant that powers like 50% of DC and half of Virginia close to me as well. And it's already on the predicted list. If there's a nuclear attack, that's where they would hit. Nuclear power plant's another one. So not only do you have a nuclear bomb hitting you also have it possibly causing a meltdown at a nuclear reactor after it hits it.
Getting a double whammy there.
And that's the scary part there, not necessarily the nuclear bomb. Like I said, there's a couple different types of nuclear bombs that are scary. Like they're dirty bombs or salted bombs. Cobalt bomb, it's what they call a salted bomb. Basically, it's designed to create more radioactive fallout and create an inhabitable area for longer periods of time.
Now, are these salted bombs or cobalt bombs? Are they are something that is in the nuclear arsenals of nuclear powers?
They've known about them since the 50s. I don't know if anybody has them, but scientists came up with it in the 50s because he wanted to prove that it could be done, that people could be making these bombs that are substantially more dangerous than a regular one. The initial blast, so it works through fusion, like I was talking about the neutron. The neutrons interact, but it's basically mainly that. Whereas with a fission bomb, you have the initial explosion from. So what they do basically with these cobalt bombs is they attach a bunch of cobalt 59 being the number of protons and neutrons. They attach a bunch of cobalt to it, and they contain the explosion inside. Well, they contain the fission inside the bomb. So the neutrons basically interact with all the cobalt before the cobalt gets blown up and spread out. It turns it into cobalt 60, which is highly radioactive, and it has a half-life of like 5 years. So basically, it's half-life substantially longer than most radioactive fallout you get from a regular bomb. So it interacts with all this cobalt, makes it radioactive before the bomb before the blast wave spreads it as far as it can. So yeah, I mean, it's designed to create an area. It's designed to create more fallout and create an uninhabitable area for longer periods of time than a regular bomb.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Then there's bombs that are literally called just neutron bombs. So they don't have cobalt, but like we were talking about with a core, if a core being exposed, I mean, it's just they're shooting out neutrons and making things radioactive. So there's a bomb designed to where it doesn't encase the fission. Basically, it prematurely, I guess, lets the explosion out. So basically, it's not building up that pressure. It's not the way fission works. I have to explain it, but basically, it lets the neutrons out before it creates a bunch inside, and it allows it to create more radioactive elements. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's basically designed to do the same thing as a cobalt bomb, just in a different way.
Okay. And then the bombs that they're using these days, like the Russians would use or the Chinese would use, what are we looking at there? Just your run-of-the-mill typical nuclear warhead. Is it pretty big megatons, or what are they doing?
I would say they probably go for smaller megaton more than anything, instead of bigger bombs. Bigger bombs obviously will take more power. It's going to be slower. Like we're talking about these hypersonic missiles, though. I mean, they're a couple minutes they can hit the West Coast. But I would they would do smaller bombs, but they're going to spread them out. I'm not an expert in that, but that'd be something to definitely do some research into. Like I said, I don't know if anybody actually plans to use cobalt bombs. They have them in their arsenal. But what we were talking about, actually, speaking of that, about the neutron bombs, we actually used to use those. I don't know if we still do. We actually used to use those in nuclear interception systems. So, like, let's say we were to get a warning that Russia launched a nuke, we would shoot up a neutron bomb, have it explode the neutron bomb right next to it, and the neutrons basically would interact with the nuclear fuel within the other bomb, create partial fission, and basically it would almost render it unusable. The whole design purpose behind it. The neutrons would interact with that bomb, and it would render it useless before it impacted.
Meanwhile, down here, we're getting exposed to radiation left and right, but
well, that's one good thing too, though. If we'd explode in the air, like I said, an airburst, you really don't get a whole lot of nuclear fallout. So
now when you explode an airburst, where does this nuclear shit go? It just disperses, or?
I mean, see, a lot of the nuclear fallout you're getting is coming from the neutrons interacting with the ground and then blowing it up into the air.
Right.
Because I said it's a ground burst, it's going to create a crater. With an airburst, I mean, they're detonating like 2,000 meters above the ground. So yeah, it's still interacting with the ground, and it's creating radioactive elements with the ground, but it's not necessarily blowing them up into the air. You know what I'm saying?
So that's what we're really concerned about is the fallout, right? Is these particles getting mixed with the dirt and then inhaling it or whatever.
Yeah, because like I said, a ground burst is basically going to pick up all this dirt, all this debris, and it's going to throw it up into the air with the mushroom cloud. Whereas with an air burst, it's just going to explode and go straight outward. So that's what I'm saying. Your air burst is designed to create as much destruction as possible because it's up in the air. I mean, it just goes straight out. Whereas with a ground burst, some of the initial destruction is kind of pushed upwards into the air instead of blowing straight outwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So like I don't know if you ever saw the TV show series called Jericho. Really good series back from like 2008, something like that. But it's about a small town out in, I don't know, the Rockies somewhere, and nuclear attacks happen, and these guys kind of survive through it. And I always thought that it was very well done because there was a lot of information given out. But basically, the premise was that after the fallout had passed, I mean, they kind of went back to life as normal. I mean, more like life in the 1800s is normal because there was no power or anything, but it really seems to me like if you can avoid the blast zone, avoid that radiation, and then avoid the fallout either by staying inside or whatever, then afterwards, if there's no more attacks, then you should be okay, presuming you don't harvest crops or anything, correct?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, everything that's radioactive is decaying. It's slowly moving towards a stable element at some point. And like I said, some of them last for 25 years. And as long as there's nothing there continuously radiating stuff like a nuclear core at Chernobyl, it'll eventually go away. Yeah, and so the fallout's the big thing. Alpha and beta particles don't have a long half-life. I think like the half-life for a beta particle is like 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
The problem is there might be a rock that's 50 pounds laying there, and it's putting out beta particles for the next 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So while the beta particles coming out are only lasting for 15 minutes, it's putting them out for a decent period of time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The 50-year thing was a little exaggerated, but basically that's the premise. It's making materials radioactive, which they're emitting these particles.
So the deeper it absorbs that stuff, the more longer it's going to be.
The more atoms within an object to get irradiated, the longer it's going to take before we get to the point that it's going to be safe to live in. So like there's an element, cesium. I want to say cesium 132. It has a half-life of like 30 years. So that's one element that takes a good while before you get to a point that it's going to be safe to live in.
Now, cesium and then strontium, I think it was. I heard a lot about that during the Fukushima thing. Are these a byproduct of nuclear fission or?
Strontium 90, I think it is. Yeah. So all these come from, obviously from a nuclear core melting down, you're going to get a little bit more. You're going to get there's a lot of nuclides. That's what they call them. Nuclides are like these different atoms you can see from these things. You're going to get probably more from the nuclear core melting down than you will from a bomb. But yeah, I mean, they're all dangerous. But so like we were talking about cobalt earlier with the dirty bombs. They have a half-life of 5 years, but after they decay, they turn immediately into a stable element. It's not like they go from a radioactive element, they decay to a different radioactive element, then to a different radioactive element. Some do, but the cobalt ones, for instance, they decay into nickel, and it's a stable element. So after that, they're perfectly fine. So after 10 years with cobalt, you're only down to a quarter of the original radioactive elements you're originally dealing with. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it's some nasty shit, though. We had a guy, Tommy Gunn, he's saying, let's not forget about the EMPs. Now, what are we looking at as far as, I think, if I'm correct, an airburst would be more of a threat for EMPs than a ground burst? Or could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the EMP comes from gamma rays. So like I talked about, the gamma rays penetrate everything for the most part. And basically what they do is they fry electrical systems. If you get a high amount of energy from a gamma ray passing through an electrical instrument, it'll fry it. And that's what it really comes from. And obviously that's the distance of the EMP is going to depend on, how many kilotons the bomb is, whatever, the type of delivery. So, I mean, it's all situation dependent, like some of the other things we've been talking about before. But really, I mean, the EMP would be super, super something I was worried about. If you are, you can shield your stuff. I mean, so you can try to shielding you almost. I mean, you can get Faraday boxes and things like that. Now, if you're close to the bomb, they're not going to do much for you. But I mean, if you got some instruments that you're really worried about getting destroyed that you might need in that type of scenario, I mean, you might put them in a Faraday cage, then put them in your basement, and you know what I'm saying? Or you might even go build like a concrete box or a lead line box or something like that to put your stuff in. But yeah, EMPs, they can destroy some stuff.
I would assume if an EMP went off, communications would be a really big thing to worry about, right? So putting a ham radio down in a Faraday cage in your basement, with some food and water would probably be a super good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on my thing. If I was like in a survival scenario, I'd be really, really cautious with radios. Radios work both ways. And I don't know if you guys actually know this. There's actually some primitive ways to track which way radio waves are coming from. Not very many people are going to have radios at that point. So, I mean, you almost be pinpointing your location. And let's say you have a group of people that you plan to operate with. I mean, you make contingency plans and you have a group of 4 or 5 people, and you all plan to come together and maybe protect your assets and work together, to survive. Something we did in the military. See, obviously, I talked about earlier with the 5-paragraph orders. You have a comms plan. Number one on the list for comms plan was not radios. We have radios that do everything. I mean, we have high frequency VHF, UHF, sat phones, or satellite comms too, just regular radios. Hand and arm signals was the first one every time. You should be able to communicate without making noise with hand and arm signals. If you're in a team, I wouldn't use radios. Somebody's going to be able to tell where you are, possibly, and they're going to come try to take what's yours. Like I said, looting is definitely going to be a problem. I mean, we've seen looting over nothing in the past couple years. So now, obviously, I mean, we get hit by one bomb and then it's over and done with. Yeah, you might be able to use radios because there's going to be emergency frequencies broadcasting, some instructions like, you can get aid here, you can go to a shelter here, things like that. So those would be helpful in that case. Like I said, if I was in a scenario, maybe I would worry about my own survival and, the government collapse and things like that. I'd be really, really cautious about using a radio.
Super good point. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I know that's on a lot of preppers' contingency plans that, shit goes down. I'm going to turn the damn ham radio on, figure out what's going on. But I guess a lot of people don't think about that, is there are ways to go ahead and pick up on, who's using ham radios. And if you guys think that people aren't out there studying how to do that, you're wrong. There definitely are guys who, like Brandon, who have been in the military, who know about that stuff. And then other guys as well, I'm sure, have, watched YouTube videos or taken courses that are aware of how to triangulate a position or whatever the terminology is. So,
and on top of that, I mean, if you have a license to use a ham radio, your information's public domain. Everybody, it has to be. I can go along right now and find everybody in my town that has a ham radio license, what their name is, what their address is, what the call sign is, everything. I mean, it's like, for instance, I know for a fact, like our local town pool has 3 ham radio frequencies and call signs for the different parts of it. I mean, so there's like, I don't know, a couple 60-year-old dudes in my town that have ham radios. I know where they live and I know their names. So you got a ham radio license, everybody knows where you live and what your name is. And so yeah, your information's out there.
So take the course, but don't pass the test.
Yeah, just don't get caught using the radio unless something bad happens.
Yeah.
You got a big fine to pay.
When I was down in tactical response and doing the training out there, we all used ham radios to communicate with each other. And we asked James Yeager, we go, bro, this is illegal. None of us have ham radio licenses. He goes, yeah, but I train the cops. They don't care. So I guess it depends kind of where you are and what you're doing. But federally, I think, to your point, federally speaking, that that really is a no-no, isn't it?
Yeah, and really, it's not even local cops, and it's the FCC. The FCC, they're very weird. Like, obviously, the electromagnetic spectrum is very touchy, but everything has to be approved by FCC for an electrical device. Like, phone charger, a phone itself has to be approved by the FCC to operate, on certain frequencies. Make sure that's not interfering with like military frequencies or aircraft frequencies, things like that. They're really the ones that are gonna make a big deal about it. And really, the only way you're gonna get in trouble is if some dude wants to gatekeep who spent 10 years studying his 6th license up in the rank, and you hear somebody on there doesn't have a license and he's butthurt about it, and he's gonna go call the FCC. Somebody around my area, is doing this. It's really the only way you're gonna get in trouble.
So, Brandon, tell us a little bit more about you, man. I'm curious. So when did you go into the Marines, and how long ago did you get out?
I went in 2015. I was 17 years old. I turned 18 in boot camp.
Awesome.
And I did boot camp Paris Island, infantry training battalion, which is part of SOI on the East Coast as well at Camp Geiger. Got ran doing a lot there. Then I got stationed in Camp Pendleton. And I did like an 8-month workup, then went to South Korea and Okinawa, and then mainland Japan. So on Mount Fuji for a while. That was a good time in the middle of winter. It was freezing.
Oh, man.
South Korea in January was cold. I mean, we were like 7 clicks from the DMZ.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was freezing cold. I had heated insoles in my boots. I was turning my remote on. Everybody was looking at me all jealous. Then came back. I went to a couple different courses, one of being the Cbrn one. Then I went to an intelligence course, basically we have something called a company level intelligence cell. So I went to like a course to basically learn how to create IPBs, their intelligence preparation battle space. It's like briefing units that are coming in.
Cool.
And then actually I got sent to go learn Arabic for 5 months. That was a weird time. It was actually fun. Yeah, and then went to a bunch of countries after that. I've been, I think, 12 or 13 countries.
Nice, man. That's cool. What other countries did you go to?
Yeah, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Djibouti, Africa. I will never go back there. That's hands down. It's so hot and so humid. Kuwait, Oman, India, Sri Lanka, Bahrain. I think there was 1 or 2 other ones. I might be forgetting some of them.
Oh, you got around, man. You got around to a bunch of good countries. How'd you like Oman?
It was fun. I mean, really, it's a lot of desert. Some of them we were right there, like on the port cities and stuff like that. So there was some good stuff to go do. Honestly, I think one of my favorites actually was Singapore. That was one I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
Singapore was a good time.
Really, I heard, man. Singapore slings, right?
Yeah, it's a really clean country. I mean, it's right next to Indonesia, which is this super dirty country. You can't even breathe because the smog's so bad. And then you go to Singapore, and it's like one of the cleanest places you ever. I mean, it's cleaner than like walking through, like a suburban area in America. I mean, it's super nice.
Is that the place where you get caned if you spit your gum out on the ground?
A lot of places. You're not allowed to spit on the sidewalk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like Indonesia, like a lot of the Asian Pacific countries, like it's a big no-no to spit on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Indonesia is like Fast and Furious Moped Edition. I mean, they're just like speeding in and out, and there's actually like a moped gang. So like obviously every country you go to, you get briefed by like a counter intel team. So there's counter intel units operating in all these countries, so they know basically the lowdown. And before they let you go out in these countries, they come up and be like, here's the deal. And then Indonesia was a funny one. They're like, you guys gotta look out for this gang of mopeds. And we're like all laughing. We're a bunch of like infantry guys. Some of these dudes, some of the guys in our unit are like 230 who are actually doing like bodybuilding competitions. Like, I ain't worried about no guys on mopeds. Apparently they're pretty dangerous. So
interesting. Fucking moped gangs. Go figure.
Yeah, the moped gang.
So tell me a little bit more about this Arabic school you went to, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean that was another thing. Like, so our unit wanted us to obviously not have to. The infantry, I'm sure you've noticed, the infantry in the Marine Corps is making a big shift. We're really stepping up our game. And what we're really trying to do is move away from a line on people that aren't in the infantry. So basically, beforehand, if we had a job that was non-infantry related, we'd get somebody attached to the battalion. What we're trying to do with a lot of the different jobs is teach the senior infantry guys who kind of know their job already. So they've done one deployment. They still got one or two more left on their contract. We're going to send them to go learn some things. So we're not relying on people that aren't necessarily within the job field that we're in. So we're on the field operating. We ain't going to rely on one guy who might not be able to make it to the top of the hill or might not know what he's doing. And obviously, it's better to have secondary and tertiary backup plans. You know what I'm saying? So you might take a round and you have no translator. The big thing for the translator thing was when you're in country, I mean, you can't trust the translator they're going to give you. I mean, you don't know whose payroll he's on. You don't know if he's going to ditch you or desert you the first time something goes down. So our unit set up a course. So there's DLI, the Defense Language Institute. They didn't actually send us there. What they did was there's a couple teachers that teach refresher courses for the guys that actually went to DLI. So if you were a Raider or you were a SEAL on the West Coast, there was like one or two teachers that taught the refresher courses for them. So they actually took one of the refresher course teachers, brought her to us, and basically we were TAD for 5 months, and that's all we did. 8 hours a day was learn Arabic.
Really?
It was a good time. And
so I assume you still remember some of it.
It's a little bit, yeah. Obviously, it's been about 3 years since I've used any of it, but yeah, I still remember some of it. It was a good time. Yeah, then we took like the OPI and the DLPT, which are the 2 tests you take. Good time.
That sounds, dude, you sound like you've had a hell of a career in the Marines. When did you get out?
2019.
Okay. So right in time, honestly.
Yeah, everything kind of seemed like it went downhill. I'll be honest with you. I don't miss the Marine Corps. I miss the job. I love the job to death. But I don't know. I kind of had some conflictions with myself about it, and that's the reason why I really didn't want to stay in. But like I said, I love the job to death. I miss the job. I mean, it's a good job to have. I mean, a lot of people hate on it. Once you get out, it really doesn't transfer to anything unless you want to be a defense contractor working for a shitty company. You make money. But a couple of my buddies did it, and they were making 6 figures, but they hated their life. The company didn't care about them. All these companies care about them making money for their stockholders. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we got, I mean, DJ, who's one of our guys here at GFS. He does that and did that. And he worked for oh man, it's escaping me right now. It was Blackwater, then it was Z, then it was Academy, and then now they're operating under something else. But he was working for them, and same thing. He said, he fucking hated it. They didn't treat him well, and eventually he left. So yeah, I mean, what do you really do with that skill set? But I think the good thing is that when you do get out of something like the Marine, especially, in a leadership position like you had, a guy reading your resume is going to say, oh shit, like, look at all this, he's hired, over some kid that just went to 4 years of college, right?
Yeah, you would hope, but
depends who's reading your resume.
Yeah.
We got a question here. Just got on. You probably already answered this, but do you think trench warfare will make a comeback with this war or in the coming future wars?
So the warfare we've been fighting for the last 30 years is not normal. It's an anomaly. We've been fighting asymmetric, unconventional warfare. Yeah, it's going to go. Trench warfare will make a comeback. I mean, conventional war will be a thing again, most likely. I mean, unless we're fighting a proxy war, I mean, if we actually go head on war to war with another country like Russia or China, I mean, yeah, you're going to go back to trenches. I mean, it's a good defense. You always dig in. So we have an acronym we go through with defensive positions called SAFE-SOC. So the E in SAFE-SOC stands for entrenchment. So you go through the steps. Once you get to the E, you're digging in. You're trying to get as much protection as you can. And obviously that eventually evolves. If you're holding that defensive position for a long enough time, you're always improving. You're eventually going to start connecting your fighting holes. And once your fighting holes are connected, you got a trench. So yeah, I mean, it's inevitable if we go to a full-out war with another country, it'll happen again.
Now, do you think that that's a possibility? I mean, everyone's talking about, well, we can't go to fight Russia with NATO because nuclear weapons. But I mean, there's potential we could see that and nobody uses them, correct?
Yeah. Nuclear weapons were designed to be a deterrent. The reason why we detonated 2 of them in World War II is because, I mean, we were almost down to the last option. It's like either, we're all going to exhaust our resources till one of us collapses, or we're going to nuke you and get it over with.
Right.
We're
going to send our Marines in to mainland Japan, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like we actually gained a foothold on Okinawa, and that's actually some good stories too. If anybody's interested in those, you can read the story about Sugarloaf Hill. We reduced, I think it was 2 Marine divisions down to like a company size trying to take Sugarloaf Hill, which is just this little itty bitty hill on the island of Okinawa. I mean, it's like a 100-foot tall hill. It took us forever to get that foothold, and once we got there, I mean, we were ready to push into mainland. At that point, they're still not giving up. At that point, just drop a bomb and get it over with. I mean,
yeah.
Germany was already on the backhill slope. I mean, they were on their heels. They were done for. I mean, really, Japan was the last one, and they just refused to give up. But yeah, nuclear weapons were designed as a deterrent. That's all they are now. I mean, as I'm sure you've seen with the news lately, I mean, Russia talks a big game, but they can't back it up. I mean, nukes are really the only threat they still have left on us. I mean,
well, let's get into that for a second here, because I mean, you know what you're talking about with this stuff, man. Like, Russia went in there and they were acting like a big boss, and then it turns out they're getting their fucking ass kicked. And now, you hear on the news conflicting things, right? You're hearing, oh, well, maybe they're kind of pulling back. And then, oh, well, they're just consolidating. In your opinion, what might be going on here?
So, yeah, obviously with the news, it's all propaganda coming from somebody. I mean, you really can't believe the thing you see. I mean, you got to try to gather as much information as you can and then make your own points out of some of it. From what I've seen, my guess would be is it's a failure from the top down with Russia. I mean, so like we were talking about earlier, logistical support. You cannot operate without logistical support. They also don't have a decentralized command that I was talking about earlier. So everything done by their military is told from the top down. Everything's micromanaged, and you can't operate like that because you can't be everywhere at once to tell every single person, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. So that's 2 strikes against them. They had no logistical support. I mean, you've seen they're abandoning tanks. They're running out of fuel.
Yeah. And they got their conscripts just giving up the fight too. I mean, there's low morale as well.
Yeah. They've never. I mean, from some of the news articles, I don't know if they're true. Some of the soldiers were saying they went in there and had no idea what they were doing.
Damn, man.
I mean, they were told they were going to go do a military exercise, and the next thing they know, they're in Ukraine fighting. They're not doing so hot.
Well, like if you and your boys were sent in a situation like that, I realize Marines are a different breed. So like, this might not be the best question, but if you and your boys were sent in to, like, let's say invade Canada, and, all of a sudden you find yourself fighting your Canadian neighbors, like at some point you're going to just be like, well, fuck this. Right.
Yeah. I mean, they pound in your head instant obedience to proper orders, but at the same time, I mean, it's within your legal rights to disobey a unlawful order. Mm-hmm. But that whole saying is kind of a catch-22 there, because who gets to determine what an unlawful order is in court? Right. The people you're disobeying. So basically, you're fucked. Yeah.
But just from a morale side of things, I mean, they were put on a freaking FTX, right, for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end in the freezing cold. So that's got to have them a little pissed off, like, to begin with. Yeah. And then they go in there and they're doing some shit they don't want to do. They can't be gung-ho to go kill Ukrainians.
Yeah, and then obviously they don't have the logistical supports. I mean, so they're not getting fed properly. They can't keep their vehicles running. They're like, we still want you to go fight this military. armed way better than you are, even though we're a way bigger country, just because we failed to plan properly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like 20 miles inside the border, and they were already out of logistical support. You can't win a war like that.
So what do you think? What do you think happens now? I mean, you think they keep fighting? You think they pack it in? What? Just your best guess.
But it seems like they're gonna keep pushing it until they don't have an option. Then they'll probably pull back, and then after that, I don't know. Obviously, this is based on news. Most said earlier, you really can't trust a whole lot of what you see on there. I mean, it really seems like something has shifted like Putin. I don't know if his whole mindset's changed. I don't know if he's going through some type of mental disorder, but he went from being kind of like this. He seems like he's mentally unstable.
Yeah, he does.
The past year, he just seems like he's mentally unstable, and I'm not sure what's causing it.
So I've heard that he has really isolated himself. You probably heard the same things, that he really has isolated himself from the COVID. He's very scared of it. And like anyone who wants to meet face to face with him has to quarantine for 14 days first. And that really kind of cuts down the amount of people that he's talking to. And also I heard, and I forget who first told me this, but it was somebody I really trust. I just forget who. He has a degenerative disease, and I forget which one it was, but he's not doing so well, is what I heard. So that's got to be taking a toll on him mentally, you know?
Yeah, it has to be. He seems off his rocker.
He does.
Before he seemed like this guy that he had his head on straight. You know, he was like this commanded figure, and now he just seems like he doesn't know what he's doing. Decisions out of emotion, which is something you should never do.
It's not a superpower, not the leader of a superpower, man.
No.
It's, yeah. And, you know, I know DJ and I are planning to do a detailed podcast because he's been on this Ukraine thing heavy. So guys, we're going to definitely dive into this. I'm just making the time, probably next week when my schedule calms down, we'll do a really detailed thing on Russia and what's going on there. But it's fascinating to talk to you about this, just being a sergeant, because I mean, you have an inside knowledge of like how a soldier thinks, and then kind of how the leadership thinks as well. So it really does give an extra level of insight there as to kind of what might be going on behind the scenes. Whereas you got me, you know, I don't know because I haven't been in the military. So
I can't count the number of times that we'll be doing some like in training. To be honest with you, a lot of our training is done because we call them ranges. And so basically for safety reasons, we have to do these things that are done we would never do. And I can't count the number of times I'd be sitting there and be like, what the fuck are you doing right now? This is stupid. But I mean, there's there's Russian soldiers probably thinking the same thing until they were actually across the Ukrainian border getting shot at. And they're like, what are we even doing? What are we doing here? This is stupid. I didn't even know I was coming to war.
Not to mention that like 80% of those guys were conscripts, from what I heard.
Yeah. I mean, so they got put in a rough situation.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's nutty. So it's been really fascinating to talk about this nuclear stuff. And like I said, while we were offline still, you know, I went through a little bit of Cbrn training in the fire department, and then a little bit with some other stuff. But, you know, this is very detailed information that you're putting out there. And, you know, I mean, I expect nothing less from a Marine Corps SME guy, but it's been fucking cool for me to like kind of catch up and fill in the gaps of what I didn't know. And I know a bunch of other guys out there before were saying how much they were enjoying the subject. And it's cool to talk to someone who's really been trained on this very well. And obviously you study this stuff as well. Is there anything else that you had in your notes that we didn't get to yet, or?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. One, anybody that still wants to like learn about this stuff, there's a wealth of information on there. There's a lot of .gov websites like FEMA, I think even the CDC, the Department of Energy. They all have websites dedicated to this stuff. I mean, some of it's not exactly in detail, but you can get some keywords there. You can go type in. I mean, see, they'll tell you about the different types of radiation, and then you can go look up those types of radiation and go in more detail. And then there's dosage rates, which unless you have a dosimeter that's actually decent, those really don't matter to you.
That reminds me, I meant to ask you about Geiger counters.
Yeah, a good dosimeter is going to cost you a decent amount of money. The problem that I see with them because they're all battery powered.
Oh, okay. Huh.
For me in that situation, I'd be trying to find something that doesn't operate on batteries. I mean, because you can't really charge them. Some of them have a decent battery life. There are dosimeters that don't require a battery. It's like a pen like this, and it has like a sight hole in it. You charge it in this little thing, and you carry it off. But those don't measure. Those don't measure the radiation you're currently at. They basically just measure like the max dosage you got during the time.
Okay.
They're not really going to help you that much. Whereas the dosimeter that's reading the instant rate, you can tell like when you're getting close to an area that's super radioactive, and you'll be okay, I need to circumvent this area. But then there's some medical symptoms, the different types of radiation, the different types of radiation syndrome that most people get to kill them. So you can, I mean, almost all this stuff's available online. You just have to take the time to do the research. Probably find out more information than I do. Like I said, you can find possibly old nuclear fallout shelters. You can find storm shelters, things like that, and those could be added in contingency plans.
I really like what you said earlier about looking for bank government buildings. I think that that's a really good tip.
Yeah, most of them are built for security, pretty sturdy. I know we were talking about the iodine pills earlier. Like I said, I know most of them are sold out, but they do work. Something interesting about those, though, is like I told you, the iodine 131 is what gets in your thyroids. That's why you take the iodine pills. It fills your thyroid up with iodine so you don't absorb the radioactive iodine. If you don't have iodine pills, it's actually better to get a higher dosage of iodine 131 than is a low dose. Because basically what it does is it completely kills your thyroid, completely kills it. At that point, you don't get cancer. Or if you get low dosages of it, you have a good chance of getting cancer, which can spread throughout your body and then end up with stage 4 terminal cancer from radioactive iodine.
So if you're going to get it, make sure you get a lot of it.
Yeah, if you're going to get it, I mean, yeah.
But what about buying, like, they have these like vials of iodine supplements and stuff you can get that I'm sure is still available.
I don't know if those work, to be honest. That's something I would do some research into. I'm not discrediting that. I would just say do your research and make sure that it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because these iodine,
the iodine that you take is a special kind of pills, right?
It's a compound. It's not straight iodine.
Okay.
I can't remember what the other element is, but I'm pretty sure I want to say sulfate for some reason, but I don't think it is. It's a compound of some sort. I know Mirror Safety was selling them. They sold out pretty quick because I guess everybody was getting scared about this. That was one of the things going back to it's important to stay inside for the first 17 days. Iodine 131. Some of it's already going to be decayed. And then after that, you're only supposed to take iodine for 7 days, ideally, because it can create some pretty heavy side effects. And there's different dosages for different people. Obviously, the boxes will tell you for kids, they're taking like half the dosage of an adult. You don't want to double up on your dosage, but you ideally don't want to take it for 7 days. So if you wait for 3 days, you come out and then you're taking your iodine pills for the next 7 days, you're already past the half-life of iodine by a couple of days already. So your chances of contracting cancer from it are significantly lower.
Okay. So now with the iodine, take it for the first 3 days if you got it. And then after that, you can start kind of weaning off it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you know that you're properly shooted, like I think the one guy was saying he was in an underground parking garage and he's like 2 or 3 stories down. I wouldn't even take it for the first 3 days. I'd preserve the time you're going to the top side where you possibly be interacting with it. So he's hiding down there for the first 3 days. He's going to come up and he knows he's within, the area that was affected by the blast. He's trying to move away. Time he comes topside, that's when he's going to want to start taking it so he can use it the whole time he's topside to get as far away from it as he possibly can.
And now if we were exposed to this stuff, we were topside when it went off, take the iodine, I guess just take it for as long as you can or 7 days until you run out.
Yeah. Like I said, I know it can cause some pretty heavy side effects. I don't know what the long-term side effects would be for taking it, way longer than you're supposed to. Honestly, I haven't read anything about it. I've looked into it. I just haven't found anything. So that would be something that maybe if you can find some stuff on, like I said, I couldn't. But yeah, I do know it causes pretty heavy side effects.
It's good to know. We got one more question here from Steven. Here's an out there question. Not now, but in the future. Do you think there could be an American-Russo alliance, and the only reason they align with China is they are the only choice? Not sure exactly what the question is, but do you think there could be in the future an alliance between America and Russia? I don't know. What do you think, man?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
There's only going to be one top dog, and when there's two other guys trying to take his place, you're usually not friends with them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm in firm agreement with you guys there, and I'm sure DJ would agree. Our Russian expert would agree as well. It's it's interesting with Russia because I don't think there's any way that we're going to be friendly with them ever again after all the sanctions we put on them and shit. It's done. We're in a new Cold War with them now. So
they want the Soviet Union back. They'll do everything they can to them, and that's why they're trying to take Ukraine back. They want the Soviet Union back, and there's just no way we're going to let them.
Yeah, no, fuck that, and fuck the Russians while you're at it. I mean, fuck the Chinese too, personally. But Chinese government, not the Chinese people. The Russian government, not the Russian people. Just interject that. Guys, just to make you all aware, real quick, shameless plug here. We are currently running a giveaway. So the first 5 people to go ahead in the next week and join the Gutter Fighting Secrets YouTube channel. Now, not subscribe, and I'm meaning join it, where you're supporting us. The first 5 people that go ahead and do that are going to be entered into a giveaway. We're going to enter you in to win a fully stocked bug out bag. All right. And I'm talking quality gear here. I'm not talking some shitty thing that you buy from China online. I'm talking like a nice North Face bag with real kit. All right. And this is something I'm packing myself. And the value of it, what is the value of it? Probably about a couple $100. All right. You're going to have everything in there from a medical kit to flint and steel and everything that you need. All right. 72-hour kit. And that's going to be on the house. We ship it to you free of charge if you win. All right. The second thing that we're going to be giving away as a prize is a brand new Gerber Bear Grylls machete. All right. So that's the first 5 people in the next week. Go ahead and join the Gutter Fighting Secrets team on the YouTube channel. Are going to be eligible for that giveaway. And it's $3 a month, guys. Like a cup of coffee from Starbucks is like fucking like $7 in some places right now. So you're literally supporting us and supporting the mission over here, letting us sit down with guys like Brandon and talk to him for way less than a cup of coffee a month. So think about it. And if you're interested, you will be entered automatically into that giveaway. So Brandon, I want to level things out here and kind of round things out because I don't want to keep you all night. I mean, I could talk about this shit endlessly, to be honest with you. But is there anything else that you think that we should know about? I mean, just bare bones stuff that you can give to the citizens out there. So, there's a saying I like. Now, I'll leave it at this and I'll shut up and let you talk. But if we're prepared, we can come back fighting. If we're prepared and a nuke happens or whatever goes off, guys like us are going to be responsible for building back and making sure that we're defended and defending our loved ones. So with that being said, what do we need to know, Brandon, to take it home?
So like I said, you got to remember the 3 words when it comes to nuclear threats, and that's time, distance, and shielding. Those are your 3 friends in a nuclear threat. Shelter is your main priority of those. You get as much material and distance between you and the radioactive material as possible. For 72 hours, you're staying down. You're not coming out. After that, you're coming up and falling back on that path. You're getting as far away as possible, getting help if need be. And if the government collapses or anything like that, you can't. There's no, structure there to help you. I mean, you're out there to help yourself. So in your survival scenario, always have a plan in place, have multiple plans in place. So I mean, that's possibly looking for your shelters online, trying to figure out, if I can got 10 minutes, I'll make it here. If I got 5 minutes, I'll make it here. If I don't have any time, this is what I'm going to do. So plan, and have another plan after that.
I like it, man. I like it. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on here, talking with us, man. I'll be in touch with you after the podcast. Got a couple of things I want to run by you, and pleasure.
It's fun. I said, it's good to get that information out there.
I appreciate you doing that, man. It's a service to all of us for sure. Well, listen, guys, until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense. And I will see you guys on the next Tactical